All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our workshop on tools for the international job search, brought to you by Career and Professional Development. My name is Eilish Russell, and I am the career advisor here at Art Center. And I'm joined with a few other folks from my team today. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me. If you have not already done so and want to introduce yourselves in the chat with your name, your term, and what department you're in, I would absolutely love that. I love to see who is tuning into our workshops today, as well as if you're an alumni. But we're going to get started with our topic today, which is tools for the international job search. If you have any questions over the course of the workshop that we talk about today, please put them in the chat and I will answer them at the end of our presentation, and I'll make sure that I leave plenty of time for that. Or if you would like to save them for the end and ask them out loud, you're welcome to do so as well. So with that, let's get started. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to cover a few different parts of the international job search process and some, I think, important milestones and things to prepare for as you're going about your search process. So first, we're going to talk about preparing your professional materials, making sure that those are all good to go, and knowing about all of the resources that you have access to as an Art Center student as you're preparing those materials. Next, we're going to be talking about researching companies that are open to offering H-1B sponsorship, as well as kind of other opportunities that you have to research potential opportunities for yourself. Then we're going to be talking about refining your communication and interpersonal skills, getting involved with and creating a creative community for yourself here in Los Angeles, as well as online through resources like LinkedIn. Then we're going to talk about preparing for interviews, which is a very, very big part of the job search process here in the United States. We're going to talk a little bit about understanding your work authorizations, and I will share some resources to make sure that you know everything that you need to know about that process as well. And then finally, we'll just talk very briefly about having a plan B and what it looks like when you kind of need to reassess and make sure that you have some options for yourself to feel confident and excited about your job search as you go through that process. So let's get started. So preparing your professional materials. When we talk about professional materials, we're talking typically about three major things and then an additional item. So those three main things are your resume, your cover letter, and your portfolio website. And all three things are fairly intertwined. So once you start working on one, you are really going to help inform yourself about how to start creating the rest of those materials. And I imagine that a lot of you, as I noticed some folks in the chat, are farther into their Art Center careers than others. We have some 8th term students, some 4th term students, etc. A lot of you will already have prepared these materials either specifically for a job or an internship application or as part of your coursework, which is fantastic. But there are a couple of things that we want to keep in mind when we're preparing these materials to make sure that they are as effective as possible. So one of our biggest suggestions is not just to state or speak out loud that you have a specific skill, but to show that you have that skill. So demonstrating through your experiences that you have certain skills, rather than just stating them in your resume, on your cover letter, or in your portfolio website. And something that I say very often is that context is key when we're talking about our experience and our skill set. So what do we mean by this? For example, you would want to not just state that you have a specific software skill on your resume in a whole list of softwares, but you could incorporate that software name into a description of your experience so that you're providing the context to a recruiter or an employer in which you've used that software. If you have worked on a team with a group of people to produce a specific project, or to, with a club or something like that, then you can create context for the scenario in which you worked with a team or with that group by describing the way that you worked with that group in a description on your resume, on your cover letter, and in your portfolio website. Other ways that we can explain context or demonstrate our skills are on, situations like our portfolio website, where we can include, as part of our projects, a list of process photos, a description of the project brief that we've worked on, or the specific part of the internship that we were assigned, if we're talking about an internship project that we've worked on, etc. These are all really, really great ways to demonstrate our skills, showcase our process as part of our professional materials, rather than just stating that we have them. There are a few reasons why this is very important. And one of them, and one of the examples that I specifically like to give as some food for thought, is that if you are in a room, if your resume is in a room, without you, and you're not able to provide additional context to that material, to the person who's reading it, can your resume or your portfolio website stand on its own and describe all of your skills in full? As in, can that recruiter look at your resume, look at your portfolio website, and understand how you've utilized the different skills that you have, where you've utilized them, as in which projects, and what the outcome of your skill use was? If the answer is yes, that's fantastic. That's great. And that really means that your professional materials are a great demonstration of your skill set. If the answer is no, or I'm not sure, that's absolutely fine. But that is definitely an opportunity that we have to take another look at our professional materials, work on those, and make sure that we're demonstrating, again, the full breadth of our skills in our professional materials, and not just stating that we have a skill and hoping or believing that the context of that skill will be inferred based on the rest of our materials as well. An additional note to remember as far as resumes are concerned is to remember the role of ATS, or applicant tracking softwares, and be prepared to work within how an ATS may interact with your resume in your job search process. So many of you may have already learned about what an ATS is, and some of you may not have yet learned about this system. But in short, ATS is an applicant tracking system, a software that companies may use as part of your job search process to organize and store the resumes that are being sent in to apply for an internship, a job position, like a job opening, etc. The degree to which you'll be encountering an ATS, or an ATS will be used on your resume by a particular company, is really dependent on that company and their personal process. So what we want to do on our end is prepare for the possibility that we might be encountering an ATS as part of our search process, and have the option, have a resume that works within an ATS system, rather than a resume that may not work with an ATS system, and that can unfortunately maybe get us filtered out of consideration for that particular position because it's not ATS friendly. And when I say be prepared to work within the confines of an ATS, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, having a resume that is ATS friendly, that you can utilize for those types of positions. At the same time, you can have a designed resume that is maybe not ATS friendly, that you can still use as part of your application process and submit it as supplementary material or additional documents in your application, so that you showcase both the ATS friendly version of your resume that will kind of, match the software or get through the algorithm. And then you have the designed resume that looks and feels the way that you want it to, that is an extension of your design skills. And you can use both of them together in partnership in your application to make sure, again, that you're presenting yourself in the best and most effective way possible. Okay, so the next phase of kind of the things that I want to talk about today is researching companies that are going to potentially be able to offer sponsorship, that have previously offered sponsorship, etc. So on the CPD website, which I'm going to put in the chat at the end of our meeting today, you're going to find a few different links to websites online where you can find information about companies that have offered sponsorships previously, that are currently posting jobs that have offered sponsorships, as well as a third option, finding companies that have global offices worldwide, which is also a really, really great option, which I will talk about a little bit as well later. So to start at the top here, Going Global is a really, really great resource for finding job opportunities at companies that have previously or are currently offering H-1B sponsorship. If you know that a company has previously offered sponsorship, you are really increasing your chances of potentially being offered sponsorship by that company when you apply, knowing that fact already. So we do want to be intentional in our search for potential positions by choosing to apply to companies or networking with companies that are open to offering sponsorship, rather than applying and hoping down the line that sponsorship may become an option. There are some circumstances where that can work, where you send in an application, don't mention sponsorship initially, and then it can, work out on the tail end. However, I would not recommend going that route in general, because I think that it is far more likely that that will not end up with a sponsorship offer than it is to end up with a sponsorship offer. So again, Going Global is a great resource for that. My Visa Jobs is another resource that will show you a whole list of companies that are offering jobs currently, so a job board in the kind of traditional sense, that are open to the idea of sponsoring a H-1B visa for those specific jobs. Now, some companies and some of the jobs that are listed on that website may not be exactly what you are looking for. So you're going to have to kind of play around with the different industries and the different titles to see if there are any opportunities that fit what you are looking for at the time that you're looking. Our third option here, Uniworld Online, is a great resource for identifying if a company based in the United States has offices globally, or in the reverse, if a global company has an office in the United States. Now, if a company has global offices, so maybe they're headquartered in one place, but they have additional offices in a few other places around the world, you greatly increase your chances of successfully applying and being offered an opportunity with that company, because they already have a global network that they're open to considering candidates for. Now, that may end up being that the opportunities that they're willing to consider, international candidates for are not located in the United States, but it is a good gauge just to see the types of companies that are hiring international applicants or are hiring for offices around the world, so that you know, generally speaking, what your options are. My final suggestion here, and this is going to kind of compound a later suggestion that I have, is to do some research on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fantastic resource. I would imagine that some of you already have LinkedIn profiles, but some of you may not have made them yet. LinkedIn is a fantastic resource for not only identifying companies that have a strong presence online and maybe international offices, but you can also use it to find out where previous Art Center students, now alumni, have gone to work after graduating. So LinkedIn as a tool is something that you're able to utilize to search alum in your individual industry or in your department based on your degree name. Find out where they're working, what parts of the world they're working in, and then you're actually able to network directly with them to ask them questions maybe about what their process looked like. If you find a candidate who is in the company that you're interested in working in, and maybe they have a similar trajectory to you where they came to Art Center on a student visa, you can ask them a little bit about what their process was like. You can say, what was the process of finding this particular position like? Do you find that you were, immediately discussing sponsorship opportunities when you started interviewing with this company? Did you make a connection with them virtually first, as in on LinkedIn or at a networking event? Or did you just apply directly to that role? However you choose to kind of find that information and what specific questions you want to ask, LinkedIn is a really, really fantastic resource for, identifying opportunities or identifying resources, people who can be great resources for you, to gain a little bit more information about the options and opportunities that you have. Okay. Next, we want to talk about refining your skills. So working on your communication and your interpersonal skills is going to be a large part of the job search process for you in the United States. And this applies to everyone, international students, domestic students, etc. So some things that we want to work on are practicing our presentation and our interviewing skills, communicating with other English speakers, and visiting the writing center to ensure that our communication skills are up to the standard of what we would want to be working on for an interview with a company in the United States. And you can do these in a few different ways as well. You can also join a club or a professional organization at Art Center or in the greater Los Angeles area. You can get yourself involved in different types of activities. You can volunteer. If you are able to, for instance, get a job on campus where you're talking and communicating a lot, all of these types of things are going to work to improve your communication and your interpersonal skills. And they're really, really going to benefit you on the back end when you're in the process of interviewing for and applying for a job opportunity in the United States or abroad. So this is also a general suggestion for everyone, regardless of kind of where you are in your search process at the moment and where you are looking to work. My next suggestion here is to expand your creative community. So think about how you can get involved and create a network for yourself, again, both in person and digitally, because the digital space is, of course, very broad and can be very, very accessible, even if perhaps in-person spaces are not always something that we're able to get involved in. So what are some ways that we can get involved, and what are some ways that we can meet folks and network to create opportunities for ourselves? First and foremost, I think on-campus associations, clubs, and meetups with Art Center are a really fantastic way to work on these types of things. It goes back to my previous point about working on our communication and our interpersonal skills. Meeting up with on-campus organizations, bringing in some of those extracurricular activities are really, really fantastic ways to get involved, make some connections that you can utilize as part of your job search process, and of course, meet people who may be able to give you some suggestions as well. My second suggestion here is to look into professional organizations. So professional organizations are groups of people who are in your industry who might have a meetup or a digital platform where they talk about new updates in the industry, job opportunities, general trends that they're seeing, or just sharing stories and their own experiences about working in that industry. And professional organizations are a really, really wonderful way to meet new people that you may not have had the opportunity to meet as part of your time as a student at Art Center as well as a great opportunity to meet people who might be hiring in your industry at the time that you are graduating or preparing to graduate and looking for jobs. So a great way to find professional organizations is through the CPD website. We have a whole list of professional organizations organized by industry or by department there that I absolutely recommend everybody check out. Another really great way to find professional organizations is to look on LinkedIn. Again, you'll notice a trend here that LinkedIn is a resource that I'm going to be talking about very frequently today, because I do think that it's a great way to network and to reach a broad audience. But using LinkedIn to find professional organizations or groups of like-minded industry professionals is very simple. There is a search bar at the top of the website that you can use to search transportation designers or product designers or shoe designers, etc., to give yourself kind of a sense of the types of groups that are available out there, the types of things that they're talking about. And again, you might find some folks that are in a similar boat who can offer you some suggestions as you're preparing for this search process, or you can network with people who may be in a hiring position who would be able to consider hiring an international student or an international hire and offering sponsorship at some point. And then finally, of course, our digital communities. So digital communities involve things like LinkedIn, but they also involve things like Instagram. If you're, active on Twitter or TikTok, any of these social media platforms where you are present as a professional, so where you are talking about specifically your work and engaging with other folks about their work in your industry, you can create a community that really, really helps you get your work out there, reach a wider audience of people seeing your work who may be interested in it, as well as potentially network with folks who can offer you opportunities, can offer you suggestions or tips, or pass your information on to others who may also be able to offer those things. And again, sometimes what your networking and professional organization building process will net you is even just suggestions from people that are in similar situations or have been in similar situations in the past. You may come across somebody who graduated from Art Center 3 years ago, who was an international student and was able to identify some opportunities for themselves that ended in sponsorship and a job offer in the United States, who can really provide some great resources and a really, really wonderful kind of opportunity to see maybe a light at the end of the tunnel in your process. And they're really great resources as well. So I want us to think about networking, not just from the perspective of how do I find an employer who will offer me a job, but how do I communicate with people who are able to share resources with me and who I'm able to share resources with, so that we can all learn from and help each other in our job search processes as a community and not just as individuals. Okay. My next suggestion here is about preparing for interviews. So as we mentioned earlier, strong communication and interpersonal skills are going to be a big part of your process in finding a job in the United States. Interviews typically are at least one round. Sometimes there are multiple rounds of interviews. So you might take a first round interview and then be asked to come back to meet with additional people at the company that you're interviewing for. So preparing for those and being aware of what you might need to do is going to be really, really helpful in your process. Now, we have a couple of ways that we can help folks prepare for interviews here at CPD. The first one is to schedule a mock interview with a career advisor or with another one of our staff members. And in a mock interview, what we'll do is we'll sit down and talk through some of the questions that you might be asked in an interview scenario. I will ask those questions to you, or another CPD staff member will ask those questions to you. You'll respond, and then we'll talk through a little bit of feedback to see where you feel really strong, and maybe where we want to work on building up a little bit more strength, and where we can refer you some resources for, to really kind of strengthen and improve and get us feeling a little bit more confident in those interviewing skills. And we can approach mock interviews from the perspective of a very general interview. So what are some of the most common interview questions you might be asked anywhere? Or from a very industry specific interview perspective, where we're asking you questions about your work as a product designer or a transportation designer or an illustrator. Now, our second tool for preparing for interviews here is a tool called Big Interview. Big Interview is a website that you have access to for free as an Art Center student, and I really recommend it for getting some additional preparation, even if you've already scheduled or utilized a mock interview to prepare for your interview process. Big Interview allows you to see different types of questions that you might be asked in an interview scenario, record yourself answering those questions, and then you can view your recording back so that, again, you're able to see where you feel very strong and very comfortable answering an interview question, and where maybe you feel a little bit less confident answering a question, so that we can identify then together what resources might be the most helpful for you in preparing for the rest of your interview process. Big Interview, again, is something that you can access through the CPD website, and I will be sending out some resources following this workshop today, as well as adding some in the chat for anybody who's interested in them. So I absolutely recommend checking out Big Interview at your convenience if you would like to see what types of tools and resources are there. So what are some of the steps or the things that we want to be preparing for as we are preparing for our interviews? First and foremost, we want to research the company that we are applying for. We also want to do research on salary and industry trends in that industry, so that we're walking into the interview feeling prepared to advocate for ourselves and know what we want and what is typically standard in the interview process. So company research includes things like, what types of projects is the company currently working on? Have they been in the news recently? If so, what have they been in the news for? More broadly, what types of industry trends are there in a specific area? So for instance, if you're a product designer, what types of industry trends are there in shoe design versus packaging design versus another type of product design, et cetera. And then research also involves things like general salary ranges, et cetera, to really feel confident in knowing what you are seeking as a salary range when you walk into an interview, as well as possibly what that company is considering as a potential salary range for the position as well. All of this research is really important in preparing yourself for the interview, because you're going to be asked things like, why are you interested in working here? What part of this company is really exciting to you? What made you decide to apply for this role? And learning about what the company is doing, what types of projects they're working on, and again, if they've been in the news recently, or if they're working on something new and exciting, or taking charge of a specific trend, are all going to really help you prepare to answer those questions of why you want to work for them. The next thing that we want to think about is preparing to answer the more in-depth questions that are going to be asked of us in an interview. So these are going to be things like, tell me about your design process. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about what you love to design or what you don't love to design, maybe. These can also be questions like, tell me about a time that you worked with a group and the end result didn't turn out as you expected. How did you handle that? What was your process like? Knowing the types of questions that you might be asked in an interview, and then being able to kind of come up with some answers for them, or really think about what what you would like to say as an answer to those questions is really, really helpful in making us feel more confident, more excited, and more prepared for an interview so that we walk in able to present the best version of ourselves. Our third section here, practice, is of course really important. Interviewing, just like networking or weightlifting or any other skill that you have, is something that you learn with practice and that you get better at with practice. The more you practice answering interview questions, either to big interview to yourself, with a friend or a family member, or with CPD at Art Center, the more you're going to feel comfortable and excited answering these questions, the more it's going to seem a little bit more like second nature to discuss yourself and your art and what you can bring to a company, and the more smoothly the entire process will go. And then finally, we want to think about reflecting and following up on our interviews. So thinking about after an interview, how the process felt for you. Did you like what the company was saying to you about the style of work that you would be doing, the type of team that you would be working with, etc.? Did it seem like this was the type of environment that you would want to work in? Does it seem like they're going to be paying you a salary range that you feel comfortable with, and that is going to be able to support you in your lifestyle, depending on where you're living? And then, of course, always remembering to follow up after an interview to express gratitude and say, thank you for taking the time to meet with me. I hope to hear from you soon regarding the next steps of this interview process. Okay, our next subject today is understanding your work authorization options. So I'm going to be talking about all different work authorization options today, but specifically for the purposes of post-graduation job search, the two work authorization options you're going to be looking at are OPT, the STEM OPT extension, and then of course, H-1B sponsorship. So as students studying on an student visa, you have kind of three different options for work authorization in the United States. CPT, or curricular practical training, is a work authorization that you can take as part of your academic experience at Art Center. So this is the authorization that you would want to take on for things like internships, and is something that you need to secure before starting an internship if you are have been offered one. Now, the option that you would seek out after graduation, so your post-graduation work authorization, is OPT, which is optional practical training. And this is something that you have access to, I believe, for 1 year after you graduate. So following graduation, you have a 1-year OPT visa, which allows you to work in the United States. If you are somebody who is in a STEM field, you have the option to extend your OPT visa by an additional period of time. There are certain industries that fall under the STEM umbrella at Art Center, and I highly, highly, highly recommend, which we're going to talk about right now, reaching out to International Student Services and scheduling a meeting with them, if you've not done so already, to have an understanding of when, for instance, the deadlines for these types of applications or any kind of visa paperwork is due, as well as if you potentially qualify for the STEM OPT extension. If you do, again, this can be a really, really great opportunity to spend a little bit more time finding a potential job offer or company that you can work with as part of your job search process after graduation. International Student Services is also going to be a really, really fantastic hub for again, any more information about any restrictions that you need to keep in mind as part of your process, because you really don't want to be in a situation after graduation where you're not aware of any limitations that you have, or you're not aware of a deadline, and it comes up on you very, very quickly, And then, you're kind of worrying about having to deal with that in addition to potentially finding a job offer. So I highly, highly, highly recommend checking in with International Student Services at a time that is convenient for you, scheduling a meeting with them, and just learning about what the process is like, as well as what your options are, even before we start considering the sponsorship process, because there may be some opportunities that you have as part of your OPT visa period to begin working with a company, showcase that you're a really, really strong hire, and then potentially be offered a sponsorship from that period as well. And then the last thing that I want to mention, of course, before I leave us a little period for some questions, etc., is to have a plan B. So we don't necessarily want to think about this, initially, but we always want to make sure that we have a plan B when applying for jobs and thinking about getting offered sponsorship for a position in the United States. So sometimes this means expanding our pool of opportunities for where we are sending out applications, maybe not just in the United States, but to other countries around the world, or to the country where you were born, if that's an option for you as well. There are definitely many countries around the world that are willing and excited to hire international applicants in a variety of different industries. And so sometimes expanding the pool in which you're applying can really open up a lot of opportunities to you. So maybe not just in the United States, but in the United States and Canada, or in Europe, or in Asia, or in South America, wherever is a place that, maybe could offer some opportunities. The next recommendation that I have here is to really explore where your skills are in demand. So there are, again, different parts of the world where different industries are booming and have very strong hubs for company headquarters, hiring, etc. Doing some research about where your skills are in demand, where companies are really, really heavily hiring candidates, again, either internationally or domestically, is a really good way to get a sense of, again, where you might have the opportunity to go, as well as what types of companies or actual company names are hiring for positions in your industry. So take that opportunity to explore. This is also a great chance to utilize the LinkedIn networking or professional organization networking that I mentioned earlier, where you ask folks in your industry, where do you find the biggest demand for people in our role? Where do you find that a lot of hiring is happening? Where do you think my greatest chance of, being offered a position and getting sponsorship, et cetera, is going to come? Because there is definitely information out there about all of this, and industry specific folks that you might meet as part of your networking processes, folks who are in it, who are applying or seeing their friends apply, are going to be a really, really great source of information for where you can find these opportunities or where you can find these bubbles that are really, really in demand. And then, of course, having a backup plan that maybe, involves not being able to stay in the United States is unfortunately something that we do want to consider. I do want to always implore, there may not be an opportunity that comes to you before your OPT is up in order to get sponsorship. So I just want to always implore folks, have a backup plan, consider what your options are in your home country, if you have those options, and talk to as many different resources and people as you can to understand what all of your possibilities are as you go about your process here. Because you can never ask too many questions. You can never try to tap into too many resources and kind of prepare out for yourself. If I get an opportunity, this is great. But if I don't get an opportunity, what am I going to do next to ensure that I have money to live, that I have a place to live, and that I'm feeling comfortable and confident and excited about utilizing my skills? And kind of in this umbrella, of having a plan B. I always like to mention something that we talk about in CPD a lot, which is the job that you have now is not necessarily going to be the job that you have 5 years from now or 25 years from now. So sometimes a backup plan can look like taking a position that maybe offers sponsorship that isn't exactly what you dreamed of doing, but is a really, really great way to get your foot in the door, get some industry experience, and explore even some parts of your industry that are not exactly what you'd maybe originally imagined, but could still be a really, really great experience. So that backup plan can look like a few different things, depending on what your options are and kind of what you're comfortable with exploring. So in summary, a couple of things that I just want to leave everyone with today before we kind of finish up and I leave some room for questions here is start preparing for this process early. That doesn't mean that you need to be ready to go in job application mode a year before you graduate, but start thinking about preparing your materials early, start preparing your, communication skills and your interviewing skills. Make sure that you're researching effectively. Make sure that you are intentionally seeking out companies that give you the best chance of sponsorship opportunities, and make sure that you are researching as well where your industry is in the most demand so that you are applying effectively and intentionally to those types of opportunities. And finally, utilize your network as much as possible. One of our biggest suggestions here at CPD at Art Center is that networking can open up doors for you that you wouldn't possibly imagine. And I absolutely believe that that is very true. So try as much as you can to utilize your network, make connections with folks, engage in different types of organizations, meet people who are in your industry, and really, really try to connect with folks who can give you some resources, give you some tips, pass your work and your information along to those that they might work with or those that they've previously worked with, because all of that together can really, really, really increase your chances of, getting noticed in the right way, having the right opportunities open up for you, and kind of securing that position that you're excited about. Okay. Thank you so much for letting me give this presentation today. I wanted to leave up this sheet right here of some of our contact information where you can reach out to CPD. That is careers@artcenter.edu. And I wanted to open the floor up to any questions that anybody might have, either about anything that I've mentioned as part of this presentation or something else as under the umbrella of their job search that I can maybe provide any clarity or assistance with. If you would like to put your question in the chat, I would be happy to answer it. But I can also answer questions that anybody gives verbally as well. If you would like to unmute yourself and ask directly, I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.